Welcome, everybody. Today we have a very exciting episode for you. I've got Shawn Rosler here, and we are going to talk about podcasting. And I'm going to introduce Shawn before I let him say hello. Just let me give you a little bit about his background because it's really impressive. He's been doing some really cool stuff that I want to tell you guys about. So Shawn, first of all, he's a husband, father, 20-year veteran in e-learning and instructional design. So super impressive career. But in addition to that, for the last about 5 to 6 years, Shawn has been creating a podcast called the Coarse Grind Podcast. He has over 100 episodes of this. It started out as an early hometown love of food, both familiar and exotic, and grew into a passion for developing food into more than just something we eat. He has developed it into an experience that people can enjoy. Fast forward over the last 5 to 6 years, this has grown into teachable moments for his family, for those around him, and finally for his audience. The Coarse Grind Podcast seeks to display food as art and the chef as an artist. A lot of times these artists are all too often exist behind closed doors in the kitchen, never to be heard or seen from. So Shawn has been interviewing them and putting them on display to share their narrative, telling their story in a way like never before. At the end of it all, more than simply energy to live and something to pass the time, the mission of the show is to focus on food in 3 ways: eat food, enjoy food, and discuss food. Welcome, Shawn.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, really excited. I know I've got a lot of good things to ask you today because I'm really excited about this show. I really wanted to talk to someone who's invested in podcasting and has a successful show like you do. So I'm
all right. Well, when are you getting the successful person on? I'm just asking.
You are the successful person. You know what? I know what it takes to have a show with many guests, to have over 100 episodes. It's really impressive. You've got sponsors. This is an impressive endeavor that you've been doing for a number of years. So let's get into it. First question. When did you come up with this idea and why did you start doing this?
So that's easily one of the most commonly asked questions and one of my favorite to answer because it really takes people back when I tell them that we were sitting having dinner at a restaurant here in Bloomsburg, our dear old Bloomsburg, called Seasons on Main. And the idea was floating around in my head because podcasting, I wouldn't say it was in its infancy, but I would say it was early on. And I thought to myself, I don't think that anyone's doing a talk show on things culinary. And so across the table to my wife, and this would have been, now more than 5 years ago, I kicked her the idea. I said, what do you think about this? Melanie Denea's My Last Supper is a wonderful picture book. Melanie Denea is a food photographer from New York, one of the best in the world. And she did a book, My Last Supper, and then she did a follow-up, The Next Course. And it featured 50 world famous chefs with a picture and the infamous Tony Bourdain with the cow femur hanging between his legs.
Sure.
Melanie Denea did that. And so in the book, each chef has a picture and each chef has the same questions. And ultimately, it is this. You're getting your ticket punched tomorrow. What are you eating, drinking, listening to tonight? I love the format. I love the uniformity of it. I love the predictability of it. And so, we're creatures of predictability. We like routine. And so Melanie's format for the book, for the questions, made sense to me. And so I pitched the idea to my wife, Greta, and we went with it. We came up with a name, Coarse Grind Podcast, referencing some of the elements that you can coarse grind salt, coarse grind pepper. Why do you do that versus the powder? There's more edge to it. There's more substance to it. And so that's where the name came from. And it just initially was a cold call on Facebook to a former chef testant from Top Chef, Dakota Weiss, who I just 130 episodes later had back on to catch up with. And it was actually the only intro I choked up during, because as I read it and as I thanked her, I realized, wow, man, this has been 5+ years to go. And so, if you're looking for someone with their heart on their sleeve and their emotion in their work, it's me. It's going to be me. But in a nutshell, food was important to me. When I was 4 years old, sitting on a counter cooking with my grandmother, to now, it still holds that emotional bond And so for me, it's important to put that message out there. Like, all right, Karen, stop sending your plate back to the kitchen because it was 2 degrees too cold or hot. All right. Let's think about the human being that's preparing this food. Let's think about where they came from. Let's think about what their stories are. So that's both origin and backstory. So I might have knocked out 2 birds with 1 stone there.
No, it's great. That's really interesting. So you came up with this over dinner, and now you've literally been doing this for 6 years. How do you stay motivated to continue to do this? I mean, you're doing at least an episode a month, if not multiple episodes per week sometimes. What motivates you to simply keep doing this?
If I'm going to be honest, it's streaky. Like, sometimes, there's multiple in a week, and sometimes there's 1 a month. I'm not a regular scheduled guy. Again, it goes back to just being organic and going with it. As an artist, as just a human being, that's how I operate. So, I think so long as you keep your eyes, ears, and heart open to the world around you, you have limitless content. So like a Top Chef season rolls around, and now I'm to the point where like NBC Universal and I talk when a new season's coming up, because they want to send me chef testants who are going on the show.
Wow.
When did that happen? It sounds impressive. It really isn't. I'm not making the checks yet. And, I don't know if I want to be. But, so there's that. But when Top Chef isn't in season, am I traveling? Sure. Am I in a kitchen? Long story short, before kids, my wife and I bought a timeshare in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta to be exact. And like, it's those moments where literally I weasel my way back into a kitchen. Like, because that's exciting to me. That's interesting to me. That's where I find my guests. The guests that let me into their kitchen are going to let me into their heads. And, this goes for the chef downtown here in Bloomsburg, and it goes to the winner of Top Chef Masters. I've interviewed them all, and they're all of similar stories. Certainly not the same, but they all have similar elements to them, which just makes it so gratifying for people to know that. So inspiration comes from a number of areas. Now more than ever, actually, and just spoiler alert on your show. So I've done 3 COVID panels where I had former guests, groups of 3 or 4 on, and just sat down and said, where do we go? What do we do? How are we going to get through this? And everybody shared stories and actually ended up connecting and being friends. Like a chef from Alaska befriended my dear friend here in Bloomsburg.
Nice.
How does that happen? And just last night, truly, spoiler alert, easily my most powerful episode ever recorded, 132. I was with Chef Justin Sutherland, who is a chef of color and is a restaurateur in Minneapolis and runs 16 restaurants. Wow. And has really lent his voice to what's going on around race equity and inequality. And it was very powerful episode, very just impactful experience to be sitting on this end of the mic.
That's awesome how you're able to pull all these issues happening in society into what your podcast is about, cooking. That's just amazing. That's really cool that you're able to do that.
Yeah, but because really at the core of it, food drives everything. If you ever wanted to know that, look at what happened with COVID. What was the first thing people complained about?
Okay, they can't go to a restaurant.
Wow, curbside service. And what was the biggest hit? Really impactful. 70% of restaurants aren't going to reopen. You have to swallow that fact and accept it. It's just the nature of the beast. Now, some were able to roll with it, do some curbside, do some this, do some that.
Sure.
Hosea Rosenberg, another Top Chef winner. He's out in Colorado, Black Belly, and Santo is his other restaurant. And, he was doing a lot of curbside, and it worked. And he turned his restaurant into a mercantile as opposed to a restaurant.
Wow.
Like, if you ever wanted to see nimble, and I know we in the e-learning field talk about nimble and agile all the time. Man, did the food industry need to get on that. So Anyway, that's how I tuck into a little bit of everything because food affects everything.
So you talk about some of these guests you've had, and you've had some pretty you've had very impressive people. I mean, you're talking about, the reality. Your first guest was someone on a reality show on TV. How did you get her? How do you get these people? Like, how are they agreeing? How did someone agree to be on your show when you had never even done it before?
Just say what you want to say, Rainey. Why did they do it? Here's the thing. And my dad taught me this from an early age with dating. And I'm going to make a chain from dating to guests. And it's the following. Don't be afraid of no. What's the worst thing that happens?
No, sure.
She says no. They say no. And when you accept that and you find a vehicle that you can communicate through, it doesn't bother me. I have tons of no's. But honestly, I have way more yeses. And when we hang up, I have way more people who I felt were of note looking to me and saying, wow, hey, can you help me promote this? And can you help me promote that? And I'm like, me? You're the one from the show.
Yeah.
And truly probably the greatest example of that. And the dearest friend of mine now, if any of you have read Tony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential, it was the book that put him on the map.
Sure.
And it really is, Tales from the Culinary Underbelly. And it really is true to form, for sure. Like if you've ever worked in a kitchen and you picked it up, you'll read it. And there's a character in it. Her moniker is Grill Bee. Her name is Beth Aretsky, Chef Beth Aretsky. And here's something you'll appreciate, Raimi, and only the Bloomies will get this. So my wife was in a sorority. Her sorority sister was Beth's neighbor in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
And that's how we connected. And so again, it's about asking, and it's about just letting fate take hold. So I end up interviewing Tony Bourdain's former executive sous chef, who turned executive assistant when he was doing No Reservations. She flew all around the world with him. And we ended up, we did one episode. Then I reconnected with her down the road because she was getting a noodle pop-up going. And 3 weeks later, Tony dies.
Wow.
And I'll never forget this. Like, those moments where maybe you look at a view count or you look at something and you go, man, I might have made it. Just a little bit, but I might have made it. I'm driving to work and I just find this news out. And I pick up my phone and I call Beth without thinking. And I sit in the parking lot and I talk to Beth for 20 minutes. I hang it up. I go, dude, I just talked to Grill Bee. We all know what it means. About one of the most famous culinary icons dying. That's amazing. And from there, such a strong friendship. I actually went over, I co-chefed an event with her in the Hudson Valley. We did, I don't know how many covers. We did a lot of covers. It was a long night, long day. And for the 100th episode, which was a live show, that's a whole other platform I've gotten into. She came over, she co-hosted it with me. And the best part of that weekend, I'll never forget, like, again, a moment where you made it, was late night after everyone else had, done their thing. We're grabbing beers and we sit down, and this projector right behind me, the screen, I toss in an old Travel Channel DVD of No Reservations. It was the China episode, for those of you interested. And Beth walks in, sits down, and goes, oh, he was miserable that morning. And I go, wait a minute. And she sat there and narrated the whole thing for me.
Wow.
And like, it's so weird. So, admittedly, as I oftentimes do on my show, I forget what the original question was, but I believe it was inspiration. If you're open to it and, you've kind of put out good into the universe, I really believe it does come back to you. So just be open to the inspiration. It might not be exactly what you thought it was. It might not be, I need all 16 chef testants from Top Chef. No, but here's one or two. And by the way, here's the guy that makes sandwiches downtown, whose great grandfather was a, cook in the Army during World War II.
So is there a way you come up with who you're interested in to be on your show? Like, how do you come up? I mean, you have 132 episodes. So you have a lot of ideas. Is it, how do you keep coming up with them?
Again, I mean, for as much as I eat and for as much as I cook, and you and your wife are very patient observers of my food posts and everything like that. We're constantly cooking, and it's like, sometimes a thing will come up. Here's a prime example, and again, kind of a fraternity related thing. A couple days ago, my fraternity brother texted me and goes, hey, do you know anybody who knows about mushrooms? Because I've got some white puffballs, but I've got some others that I'd like to have identified. And I had somebody just like this. Why? Before Thanksgiving, there was a farmer's market up in the Columbia Mall. Again, Bloomies, you'll know where that is. And in it was a farmer's market. and a mycologist by the name of Carlin McKee. Mycologist is a studier of mushrooms. And so I strike up a conversation with her, and I'm like, oh my God, why have I not had you on the show? And so we talked literally an hour plus about mushrooms. And so like it's there, like as you're grabbing that next ingredient and you wonder, hey, where does this come from? Or what's something else I can know? Just go out, look, and find it and be open to it. So I wouldn't say I actively pursue inspiration. I'd be beat to death tired.
It just comes to you.
I do think, you know, Top Chef and the connections I've made because of it now are just like, now they talk to each other about like me. They're like, oh, did you do the Coarse Grind podcast? I'm like, oh my God. And the guy I had on last night's episode about race relations, I check out this media piece he did, and he's wearing my show's shirt on air. I'm like,
oh, nice.
What? So it's funny. But I think probably the biggest thing, and it goes back to elementary school, is that if you're going to do this and you're going to say like, hey, if I can ever help you out, or hey, if I can promote, or hey, if I can, stand by it. Because I think if there's an industry that can sniff through the veil of Beta Sigma quicker than most, people in food can, because you know there's no time. Everything's fast. They see through it. But at the same time, if you stand by your word and you stand by your brand and you stand by what you aim to represent in your show, then you know they're gonna be good to you. Like I truly believe, and this is not like, oh look at me. I truly believe this, that at any given moment, like I could text. I've had 40 people from Top Chef from different varieties of food. I could text a question, I'd have an answer back in 5 minutes. Actually, yeah, Greta was making this dish. Burrata is an Italian cheese-like product. Do you know what it is?
I don't know.
Is?
I don't know
okay,
if I do.
So burrata is basically like a firm mozzarella shell and ricotta inside.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's almost like an egg, but it's a cheese egg. It's super cool. And we had nasturtium greens and everything out in the garden. And long story short, we before we really started to like have this on the regular, we were trying to remember the name of it. And I'm like, hang on a minute. And I get on my phone, I text Joe Sasto from 2 seasons ago, who is like pasta god. And literally 5 minutes, he's like, dude, it's burrata, check it out. Sends me an article. And it's like, but like, I would never go beyond that. Like that's, because I think in my head, before I started to make these connections, I'm like, God, you know, oh, they're never gonna, you know, I hope I don't, you know, get too close or get too creepy, turn into Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live. Remember that time when you cooked the dish? But like, I think as you go, and this is the 5+ years, you get comfortable with it and you just realize, you know, they're all stories. We're all stories in the end. I think that was Doctor Who.
Yeah, you know? Sure. That's awesome. It. So, you know, you've had all these great guests on. Is there something that makes one of your shows stand out? Like, is there something that makes it great, or something that makes a guest just truly stand out above all? Like, do you have a favorite show or something? What qualities make that for you?
I definitely have some less than favorite shows who I won't name.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask you about that.
But yeah, and there's definitely elements to that. I think when the conversation is just natural, when it doesn't feel like there's a pretense or a defense or anything like that. And I mean, I've had more pretense defense from locals than I have like famous celebrities. Honestly, one of the coolest was Christopher Kimball of America's Test Kitchen. You know, if you watch anything VIA, PBS, like he's all over it. He's a legend. And a couple of the guests would call him and be like, how'd you get Kimball? I'm like, oh, well, but he was so cool because as soon as his agent, you know, called into the bridge and like, I've got Mr. Kimball on the line, blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. And he gets on, and without a word out of my mouth, he goes, quick story before we get going. I was just in the kitchen and took like 5 minutes and I'm going. All right. If I gave you a top 3, and this isn't for any, because top 3 could go different ways. I've had my mom on, I've had my wife on, and those are special in a really unique way. But if I went from like the holy S celebrity angle, David Rosengarten was a really, really cool one. Early on, this would have been in like the 20s, the episode 20s. I searched him down. And for those of you who don't know, David Rosengarten was basically the godfather of Food Network. He was it. He had a show called Taste. It was amazing. I finally track him down and I get a recording time. And I remember like being nauseated, nervous. And I call and nothing. And he ghosts me basically. And I have to move on, right? Fast forward 30 plus episodes. And I'm like, no. Now I just did a live show that sort of in the neighborhood of 50. 50 was a live show. I'm like, now I'm not taking no. I'm digging my heels in. I'm going to reach out again. He came back so apologetic, so kind. And he's like, oh my goodness, Shawn, my apologies. Let's get on the mic. Got him on the mic. And just the coolest thing ever, because I'm like, yes, he is everything I thought he would be.
That's
because
nice.
He was truly, if you think of Alton Brown before he was Alton Brown, that's who David Rosengarten is. So that was really cool. I think Chris Kimball gets it for sure, just because, legendary, just absolutely legendary. And I don't know. I think I'd leave the third. No, you know who it was? Captain Stephen Wright of the Chatham Shellfish Company. We vacationed up to Chatham and we stayed in a little cabin. I love Raw Bar. And I look for Raw Bar and it says 400 yards that way. I'm like, what? I'm looking around and it's this old shed and I go in and here's this tall, big, quiet dude. And I just strike up a conversation and we start to talk. And I'm like, would you want to take my boys around these oyster beds and, give them a tour? And he's like, well, I haven't before, but sure. Do you know they've been given tours since? And so I finally had him on the show, shortly thereafter.
Sure.
And this quiet dude, blew the door wide open and gave a lesson on how you farm shellfish that I had no idea. And that was probably, because it was so educational, I think that's what really hit me.
Sure.
Like, wow. Gun in my head, I have to pick top three. There you go. But there's so many that mean more and different. It's hard to do. I hated mine. Greta interviewed me for 20. I'm like, this is the worst. And anytime guests will turn it around on me, I'm like, no.
So you hate being here today?
No. That's different. I can sit in the seat and I can talk about it. But Greta gave me the questions I gave.
Gotcha.
And it's like, the favorite dish? What? I can't do that. Ask me my favorite kid. I'd answer that more quickly.
Yes, those impossible questions. Like someone asking me what my favorite movie is, and I have a 30-minute explanation for each one of why they're all contenders.
What kind of mood am I in? All right, that changes everything.
Yes.
So,
what decade are we referring to? That's where I can start to get there. All right, so you've been doing this since 2014. So I want to start to get into some of the, I guess this question will kind of ease into some of the stuff that you're doing on the podcasting end, but what has changed from 2014 to 2020 in the way that you do your show? Are you more comfortable interviewing? Are you using better technology? What is happening? What has changed for you in the last 5 to 6 years?
Yeah, I'm going to be super vague and general and just say everything and nothing. Here's why. Let me explain that. Nothing, because honestly, the format for the show overall just hasn't changed. And I like that. I'm really proud of that, because I think so often stuff can change out of not necessity, but almost like a want to, conform or everything, the whole poser vibe, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do what everyone wants me to do. Honest to God, and I mean this, I'm not being flippant or anything. I don't care about views. I don't care about, counts. I don't care about anything like that. I think, to me, being true to the message and the mission that I set out to do is clutch. And so I haven't changed the blessed thing in that regard.
That is so important to be like,
if
just be
anything, I've done more
real.
with it. I've stuck more to it with the live events, raising thousands of dollars for the food bank here in the area. That to me is important. I did one of my episodes, it's in the 80s, late 80s, was a live demo kitchen at Bloom University, because one of the folks involved in the program where inner city youth come to the university and stay the weekend, they wanted a cooking class. I'm like, cool, I got a knife bag, let's rock.
Nice.
And so, I gave them that evening. So nothing's changed there. But when I say everything's changed, I think that I think my comfort has definitely improved with it. I think my overall demeanor as a food figure has evolved, and it's weird. It's weird now. I actually got cited in Weiss, and lady who was working behind the fish counter. Sorry, I'm gonna sell you out here for a minute. She leans over the counter and goes, "Are you the food guy?" Like, what? And then we ended up having a 15-minute conversation about steaks. So like I love that aspect of it. I love the fact that now there's definitely more like NBC Universal. I have literally on speed dial. Like I can call up NBC and be like, hey, I know the next season premieres. Should we get a schedule?
Like how cool is that when you're finally being recognized for something you're passionate about? Like that is awesome. Like that's got to feel just great. I mean,
I hope
does.
so, and I hope it's not just them feeling sorry for me.
No,
I think it does. I think it might be. But so that's the everything and nothing. I think everything's changed in how big it's gotten and how long it's gone, but nothing's changed in that it's the same concept. It's the same. I want to tell your story because you're behind a pass and you're hoping. Here's the thing most people don't know about chefs, and here I'll sprinkle some knowledge on top of the fish tank. Most people view chefs and cooks and people in the kitchen as true hard A's. Just, bristly, gruff, mean, and you're absolutely right. If you've ever worked in the kitchen, put your feelings in your back pocket, stow them for a while. But here's the thing you don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Chefs, cooks are people pleasers at heart. They want you to like what they put out there. And anyone that tells you otherwise is a liar or in the wrong field. There are stories from folks who Bourdain cooked for them, and Bourdain kind of stood table side, just like looking. And this is long after he's on Travel and CNN, and he's just watching because they want to know. And I know that. I know that from my own cooking. I cooked for Beth Oretsky the night of the 100th show, and I actually had the recipe published in a local magazine. I did brisket. I did brisket for a Jewish chef from New York. Who does that? That's dumb. And yet it went. It worked out well. So it's I don't know. It's a lot to take in. And I think it's opportunities like these that afford me that opportunity to take it in. And it'd be like, oh wow, no kid, you might have made a little something of yourself.
Oh, it's awesome. So you keep talking about using the word artist and talking about your life. You even mentioned elementary school. Have you always had like this drive to create or to do, to do things? Like, is this, I assume this isn't the first thing you've done that's like exciting and has been something of your passion, whether that's playing music or anything like that in your whole life. Like, have you been that person? Like, what are some of the other things you've done or interests?
Yeah. Art just as a concept was always more important to me. I was never the athlete in high school, despite, disappointing my father repeatedly, because he was a wrestler, 6'7", like he just the monster dude. And I'm like, nah, I'm cool. I'm going to play trombone. I'm going to be in the band, and I'm going to be in chorus, and I'm going to do the musical. And I did track and I did tennis in high school. I started hitting the Brazilian, and I know you're a fellow roller.
Yeah.
I hit the jits later in life and loved it. But for me, art's always been front and center. And so, food to me is art. The way that I plate something, I wipe plates for my kids. So those of you, unaware, when we say wipe plates, it's take a clean towel, wipe around the edge so there's no drips, no drops, no nothing. It's a clean plate. It's good for service. The expediter looks at it, blesses it, out the door it goes. So food's always been art, and, art's always been kind of, central to my existence. So I think that was a pretty logical transition.
I'm really fascinated by that because I as a fellow, I love art and I love creating. I find myself always have been creating my whole life, and people always ask me that. And so I'm so fascinated by other people that I see that same passion. It's like, wow, there's this interest there. There's like this spark that you have. And I love just like hearing about like where does that come from? And it almost helps me like understand myself better, hearing that other people experience the same thing. It's really
well.
Nice
There's a concept, there's a concept of the maker. Like a maker is a type, it's an archetype. And actually, those of you familiar with Canadian comedies, I know some people know Trailer Park Boys. Like that was a big thing. Now Letterkenny is kind of front and center. Letterkenny is a new Canadian, and I just had one of the Skids, which is like the gang from the show, on my show to talk about mental health. Now, again, to get back to the inspiration point, how does that fit in? Well, Bourdain, mental health, look what happened. Let's stop that. And so we have a talk about it. And so, we started talking about creating and making. And actually, he helped me, Plywood, Pat, helped me identify like, wow, I do make a lot. Like I brew, I, make jerky, I make hot sauce, all these different things. But like, you don't think about it when you're in the moment. I'm sure as you're painting, as you're creating, you don't actively think about it. I think if you actively think about it,
I wouldn't like it. It's not that. Yeah, I'm doing it for myself, for my inspiration, for my fun, and it's just it becomes a part of your life and what defines you, and you just enjoy that.
Yep.
So
yeah, for sure. And funny part though about how then that feeds life. And like, currently I'm a senior instructional designer for a fabulous company, right? And I'm in there all of 3 months. And do you know what I just got put on doing? Making a podcast for the company.
Nice. Like, well, they're utilizing what you're very good at, You
find those angles. And so to take it all the way back, like inspiration is always and will always be around you. Opportunity will always be around you. It's just that you can't be lazy about it. And you can't expect it to fit your mold perfectly.
All right, Shawn. So we've talked about your show. We've talked about your passion and inspiration for doing it. I want to move into I want to talk about podcasting in general. So like now I have someone who's literally a professional podcaster in front of me. So I want to ask you some questions because these are things I'm curious of, things I look up about other people, especially like I'm on the video end of it, but I'm really curious to hear, and I'm a tech guy. So what kind of technology are you using for this show? Hardware, software? How do you edit? Let me hear it. Let me hear what you've got.
This is going to be the most depressing
but that's okay if it is,
because
I'm curious.
I'm going to pull them up and put them up in front of the screen. Here's my mic. Blue Snowball.
Okay.
I don't do video. I'm a non-video. That's fine. And I take my stuff into Audacity.
So it's free software.
Free software. I then take the YouTube version of it into Windows Movie Maker, into my template, and 10 minutes later, I've got the video file to upload to the YouTube channel.
Wow.
That's it.
That's it.
That's zero
simple.
Cost. Zero
Wow.
cost.
But I like hearing that because it makes me think that like there's hope for that person that doesn't want to know, like, I want to start a podcast. I need to spend like $5,000 on the latest micro. I have a Blue Yeti, but even that's like $100 mic. It's not a super expensive $1 million microphone or anything like that.
Let's blow it all up completely.
Yes.
Here's all you need.
Yes.
You can podcast from your phone. You need, and I mean this, nothing else. Nothing else. You have everything you need on your phone.
No,
Like,
I agree. I try to tell people, I'm like, you don't understand that the camera on your phone and the mic on your phone is better than the standard generic one on your laptop. It's way better. That camera, that mic is way better. No, I agree. So,
see, those of you at home paying attention, Ramey just totally tech bragged as I put my single lens up and I saw the 3 on the back of his. We get it. We get it.
I'm it's the video. I'm all about the video stuff.
Sure.
So I've got to have the video.
Look at my 3 lenses.
So how do you host your podcast? Like, is there a host? You host it through your own website? Like, tell me a little bit.
I have a producer who, again, to weave the story, and it's awesome. I'm going up to my parents, not this weekend, but the following, and we're going to meet up. He's still up in Owensdale, graduated. He's in my high school class. He was a local cable celebrity down in Nashville, North Carolina. And we just ended hooking back up. It was actually his podcast that made me go, I could do this. And he's my producer. So he puts it up to our site, coarsegrindpodcast.com, goes into the RSS feed, feeds over into iTunes, iHeartRadio, all these other angles that I really don't pay attention to. I'm sorry. I handle it once I get the processed audio. Like I said, I embed it in the video and out the door it goes. So
awesome. So do you know anything, like, is there like a service or any one specific arena that gives you the most hits for your podcast? You know nothing about your views.
I wouldn't say I know nothing about it, but like
is iTunes the best or something like that, or Spotify?
I don't know. I think iTunes does get a lot of traffic. I have a following in the Netherlands, which is weird. I didn't imagine that would happen, but that's a thing, now. I think YouTube is probably the vehicle, if not Facebook.
Yeah. I follow you on both of those, YouTube and Facebook. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, and I encourage people who are coming into it, don't pay attention to that. I see this podcast group on Facebook. They're like, bro, I got 1,000 views. I'm like, first of all, no, I want to see the screenshot. Second of all, is that why you're in it? Because if that's why you're in it, get out.
Yeah, you're not going to last.
You're not going to last. You're going to be a flash in the pan.
You're going to do 20 episodes and have no more, and all of a sudden be done. I mean, I have to tell this with students with blogs. They want to create a blog, and I have to say, make sure you're passionate about it, or you will quit. Like, you do a couple posts, and then they don't touch it for 5 months. You have to love it.
People are reading my stuff. So what? Is that why you're writing it?
Exactly.
People aren't listening to my thing. So do you feel good about what you created and the potential that I actually had a kid choose to go to culinary school because of my show. Dude, I'll do it another 5 years to just put one person on that track. That's meaningful to me. That's mission centric.
No, and you don't know, like, a lot of times some things maybe it's not made for today. Maybe your audience is really 5 years from now in some cases. Like, some people are doing something creative and we're just not ready for it, or it's not discovered. You hear about, like, we're discovering these paintings from 100 years ago that no one cared about at the time. But all of a sudden it's like this beautiful work of art that just wasn't realized. And you have to, people don't necessarily realize that.
Yeah. For sure, man.
So, okay. So if you, and this is my final question for you, the final thing I want to know. If someone is watching this and they're inspired by what you had to say, which is very inspiring, I have to admit, I want to start a podcast now. Because it's one thing video is my media. I know what I've always wanted to do a podcast, but somewhere along the lines, I've got to pick and choose. But
you get a lot on your plate, man.
Yeah, so, I've realized I just can't do everything in the world. But if someone is really inspired by this and they would like to start a podcast, what is some advice? You've already mentioned, you can use your phone to do this. Is there software they should try out, or a podcast service, or what is your advice for just their inspiration, to think about a topic and how they should get started? What would you tell someone?
1, don't talk about what you know, talk about what you love. Talking about what you know is boring. Talking about what you love allows you to learn as well as broadcast. Focus on passion, not profit. Passion over profit every day of the week. I remember wanting to work in GameStop my whole life. And then my dad would tell me, or whoever would tell me, Well, you don't want to. You're going to be sick of video games. And I never worked in GameStop, and I'm still a fan. So I'd like to think he was right. And probably the third thing is just be honest. Be honest, period, with yourself and with your audience. If you have an emotion, express it. If you have a feel it and put it out there. Again, not to necessarily, spoiler alert, but the episode last night on race equity, I've made a statement, and I would have to paraphrase here, but suffice it to say, I told Chef Sutherland, I said, I've interviewed, XYZ chefs and blah, 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 blah. But before tonight, this was the most nervous I've ever been, as a white host talking to a black chef about race relations in America. And like, if you isolate that, that's a scary thing to put out into the ethos. But like, I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to shy away from that. And so, I want my listeners to know who I am, where I stand, and I want me to know. Because you know what? When I'm long gone, and you can see it here because it's video, kids, my kids are going to walk by here because it's time to get back on their computers. This is going to be an anthology. Cool story. Steve Arrowwood.
He's waving.
From Montemar Vineyards. When I was 40, my wife took me on a driving tour of California. We went to Montemar, tried his stuff, met him, had him on the show. Steve passed about a month and a half ago. People from Montemar messaged me and said, thank you so much for this episode. Yeah. And see, it's a little tough. Thank you so much for this episode. It was good to hear his voice again.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just broke down, but I'm like, this is a time capsule for my kids.
It is.
This is a time capsule for the culinary industry. If I'm not honest, what am I leaving? So be honest, number 3.
I think that's a really powerful message, Shawn.
Thank you.
I mean, it really is. And I've had those kind of self-reflections with myself, like in what I do. And I completely agree. I think it's very important. I think you're bringing up some just amazing points, things that I've thought. It's so great to talk to someone else that's a creator and doing this kind of stuff, because it makes me feel like I'm hearing like a message that I think. Like it's really interesting to hear. So Shawn, I want to thank you for coming. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being on the show today.
I appreciate it, man. Again, those of you interested, check it out. Coarse Grind Podcast. Not like a college course, but a real course. The Shawn Rosler on Insta. And I'm starting to foray into TikTok, so beware.
All right, I'll put those links, guys, on the screen here at the top and bottom. I'm going to put those links for you. All right, Perfect. Thank you, Shawn.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye.